Men. And I use the term especially loosely in an all-inclusive manner today. You may be asking yourselves, why does that fucking dumbass have a rocker box cover clamped up in a bandsaw? Well, obviously, we're going to cut the end off of it. That'll be going in the scrap aluminum bucket. And what good is a valve cover, rocker box cover with one end chopped off? You may as well chop them both off, right? No need to measure, no need to calculate anything. Success. Now both sides match. So then, you may ask yourself, what would lead a guy to chop up an ugly but otherwise good rocker box? To answer that, we got to go back a little bit, not too far back, but a little bit back to video number 197. 1962 XLCHRIP. And we got to scroll down to one of the commenters. Let me see if I can find him over here. Here he is. Stephen Smith. He asks a question. Good day. I'm scratch building an iron head motor. Two of the early rocker arms touch the stock valve top retainers before the rocker arm touches the valve stem. I have seen this before where people grind on the rocker arm for clearance, but I'm just curious, why is this so? Thanks, Smitty in Vegas. Well, the question really has nothing to do with the video that was posted, but nonetheless, I was a little curious and a little intrigued. Because customarily a guy would never know that. You screw the rocker box on after you're done with the head and you can't see where the rocker arm contacts the valve stem. So I asked him, how would you know that? Do you have a cutaway rocker box to observe the valve rocker arm? That is something a guy would not normally be able to see. The rocker arms, although basically the same, do vary in shape somewhat. My first inclination is that the valves are set too deeply in the head, which would allow the upper collar and the valve tip to ride too high and change the angle the rocker arm intersects with the valve. Yeah, how would you know? You really wouldn't know unless you had a cutaway rocker box. Anyway, Smitty answers. He's building an open rocker box motor like an old board tracker. Went through 3 pairs of heads, nice original valves and seats. The underside of the earlier 900cc rocker arms has a kind of radius to it, where the later rocker arms have a straight relief and fit perfectly. I'm not sure I agree with this assessment. I think the earlier ones have the problem and the later ones don't. But anyway, kind of besides the point. Appreciates the reply. Thanks, Smitty. So that was the origin of the problem. Smitty and I continue the conversation via text message over the next several days. And he was kind enough to send me a picture of the open rocker box engine he was building. That's the picture you're looking at right here. And as you could see, that rocker arm is just barely kissing the upper spring collar. And yeah, that might be just enough to take a little bit of pressure off the valve so that it isn't fully seating on the seat. And yeah, that might be all it takes to cause intermittent loss of compression. So go back to the audience participation video I made. and that would be video number 187. I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to see the whole story. But yeah, I think that very well could be the problem. So here's another picture of a rocker arm and a upper spring collar. This is more desirable. I'm not sure whether he ground the rocker arm that was touching or whether this is a different rocker arm. But this is what you want to see. So then, since Smitty was from Las Vegas, do a little mental ciphering now and calculate what you think the odds are of one of these rocker arms hitting a keeper on this junk cylinder head. Well, I've already done that for you. I could, go through these one at a time and show you, but that's pretty boring. So let's look at what I found out of these rocker arms. And there's what? 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 of them. There's 14 of them there. Actually, there's 15 because there's one here. Out of those 15 rocker arms, since I've already tested them, I found one that contacts the retainer. And it's actually pretty interesting. So let's put it in a rocker box and I'll show you what happens. Okay, the tip of the rocker arm is at least 60, 70, 80, 100 thousandths of an inch away from the valve stem. So this one, yes, the rocker arm does hit the upper retainer long before the tip of the rocker arm hits the valve stem. Winner, winner, winner. So here's what I'm looking at. The rocker arm is all the way down. It's hitting the valve collar, the spring collar, way back in here. It's hitting it so hard that I could pass a 30 thousandths, that's 32 thousandths feeler gauge between the rocker arm and the end of the valve stem. That's a problem, a big problem. You can never get this valve adjusted correctly. Depending on where the motor stopped, this contact area back in here could be causing this valve to hang open when it's supposed to be closed. It's always going to be putting probably a little sideways pressure on the spring retainer on the collar, and that may affect the wear on the valve stem, the way the valve seats. This is not good. But anyway, yes, problem confirmed. Some of the rocker arms may interfere with the spring collars and cause problems. And once again, since Smitty was from Las Vegas, let's play spring collar roulette. Having found at least one rocker arm that was capable of making contact with the spring collar, let's look at my stash of spring collars and see if I could find any that have corresponding wear marks. We could get rid of the lower collars. And we'll look at the upper collars. Got a flathead keeper, I think that is, or a flathead collar. And let's see what we got. Ah, here's one. All right, one out of I don't know how many, 50, 60? Okay, here's an upper spring collar, and you should be able to see this shiny wear spot here and here. Corresponds just about exactly to where a rocker arm would touch it while the engine is operating. So, you know, this is all new to me. I was unaware that this was even a problem. You know, and the problem is amplified by many things. It's amplified by how deeply the valve seat is cut in the head. The deeper it's cut, the higher the collar will lift up. And I'm assuming, well, I'm assuming that a guy, you know, knows what the limits are in the book and shims the springs and all that stuff. But nonetheless, you know, the collar is going to drift up the deeper the valve seats in the head. If you grind the surface a lot, of course it's going to remove metal from here, and the more metal that's removed from here, the more likely it is that the you know, the rocker arm is going to contact the spring collar. I don't know that these two parts were together in the same motor. This could be off of one motor, this could be off of some other motor. These are just, you know, out of my leftovers pile. But yes, it confirms rocker arm hitting the spring collar. I wish I knew. Well, this is all new to me. I was unaware that this actually was a problem. But you know, I get engines where people say they're running weird, they're doing weird things. This is definitely something to be looked for. Smitty said the early unplated steel ones tended to be straight over here, while the later copper plated ones tended to be less problematic, and there was more of an arch. They really look pretty much the same to me, really, and even the height of this little pad looks about the same. So I don't know what is different about them. This one does not have a Harley number stamped on it. Let me look at another one. Okay, here's another steel one, and this one was not hitting. This looks about the same. The pad where it hits the valve looks a little taller, but that just means it's been ground on less. Let's see. 17392-57. The part number is the same on both of these. Here's one of the copper plated ones. And it does have a little more arch in here, although this one looks like it's been polished or ground pretty nicely in through there. See, and here's another one. No part number on this one. And this one, the pad that strikes the valve tip is noticeably taller than the pad on this one. But anyway, boy, something to be aware of. I guess I'll be using this a lot more frequently from now on to check out the geometry between the rocker arm and the valve stem. let's wrap this up. Got just a couple other points. In my perusal of the internet around the time I started making this video about these rocker arms, I ran across somebody who had a problem with the rocker arm hitting the back of the rocker box over here. And as you can see, there's not a lot of clearance in here. There is some, and when I was checking all of my rocker arms against the valve keepers, I did not find any that hit over here. But that isn't to say it's not possible, and there were some that were awfully close. But anyway, something else to be aware of, something I didn't know I needed to be aware of, but apparently you do. So, you know, when you're putting one together, just make sure your rocker arms aren't rubbing on the inside of the rocker box too. As long as I'm talking about rocker arms, let's just talk about one other thing that's got nothing to do exactly with the problem of the rocker arm hitting the valve spring, but something to do with just putting engines together. Exhaust intake, intake exhaust. This is how they're laid out in the bike, just FYI. The exhaust rocker arm, right here, and right here, there's an extra oil hole that dribbles or sprays oil on the exhaust valve stem, presumably because the exhaust valve is always hotter than the intake, and that gives it a little extra cooling. Interestingly enough, the rear exhaust will fit on the front intake, and probably half of the engines I received to work on are in this configuration. So there's no extra oil on the rear exhaust and extra oil on the intake front and the intake exhaust. If this is spraying extra oil on the valve stem, it's probably getting sucked in through the guide and making it look like it's burning oil. So we'll put them back where they came from. And note, you could do the same thing in reverse. So now I've got the two rear with extra oil being sprayed on the intake that doesn't need to be there, and no oil, extra oil being sprayed on the front exhaust where it does need to be there. Now notice Harley what they did. Let's put these back where they belong. Okay, we got an intake, two intake rocker arms. Notice that at one point in time, Harley was just drilling them all. Apparently it was easier and cheaper just to drill them all for the extra hole and then put a drop of weld, a gob of weld on the intakes. So they would drill the hole in them, then weld it shut. How that is easier than not drilling a hole in the first place, I don't know. But this is from HD. I got a whole bunch of them in that box of rocker arms that are like this. So you may see this area welded up. This is where the hole used to be. But anyway, something to be aware of. Make sure you put the extra oil hole on the exhaust valve side. And one more quick tip, as long as I'm talking about rocker arms and rocker boxes. This is the end of that rocker box I cut off. And there's this plug over here. I like to get these out so I could clean inside there. They're often very, very tight, and these happen to be 3/16 and my Allen key strips out. Well, 3/16 is damn near the same as 5 millimeters. 5 millimeters is a little bigger, but what I found that you could do is you could hammer a 5 millimeter socket, Allen head socket into the 3/16 inch plug, and then you could use a conventional ratchet handle on it and get it out. This has never failed to remove this plug in my experience, and yes, getting them out of there can be a little bit of a bitch, but the you know, you wiggle it a little bit, wiggle it a little bit, and they will come out. And this particular method has never failed to remove that plug when I needed to get one out of there that was especially stubborn. So remember, 5mm Allen socket hammered into 3/16 inch hole, very nice tight fit, and it'll get these out for you if you want to get them out. And now, something I'm sure you've been waiting for. The conclusion, the final thoughts, the words of wisdom. When Smitty showed me the pictures of that rocker arm hitting the upper spring collar, immediately my thoughts went to the bike, the engine with the intermittent loss of compression. The rocker arm just barely kissing the upper spring collar almost perfectly explains the intermittent loss of compression my other customer was having with his engine. Obviously, until you take it apart and examine the pieces, you're never going to know for sure. But to me, this seems to be what could easily be the smoking gun. So I think this is something that really needs to be checked on that engine to confirm or not whether this is the problem for sure. I'm inclined to believe that it could be. Certainly it could be, but you never know, so I have to check it out and see. As far as that engine is concerned, I maintain kind of regular communication with some customers, and that particular man is tremendously happy with the valve job and the cylinder boring I did on. He says the bike is running absolutely fantastic right now. It starts much easier than it used to. It's got better compression. He says it runs great. He's sure he's going to make it through the summer without tearing it apart. He just wants to ride it. And he is in Michigan, and of course their riding season lasts about 5 days up there, up in the cold north. So he has no intention of tearing it apart right now to find out. But if he does, I certainly will keep you posted. And with that, for right now, I am out of here. But you know what I'm going to tell you? Get yourself a sticker. Get yourself a coffee cup. Join me on Patreon. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye.